Welcome, gentle listener, and allow yourself a moment of quiet as you settle in and prepare for an immersive journey through the marvels of the medieval world. Tonight, we will drift through an array of moments and objects from the Middle Ages, unhurried and attentive, as the past reveals itself in the soft glow of memory. Let your thoughts rest, your eyes close if you wish, and together we will wander the timeless paths of history under the gentle hush of nightfall. As the 12th century unfolded across the courts of France, few figures commanded as much intrigue and admiration as Eleanor of Aquitaine. Born into a world of power and poetry, she inherited one of the most coveted domains in Europe, stretching from the gentle vineyards of the Garonne to the bustling ports of the Atlantic. Her marriage in the year 1142 to Louis, the young and pious king of France, was not only a union of lands, but a merging of two very different temperaments. Eleanor, spirited, intelligent, and bold, contrasted sharply with Louis, who had originally intended to take holy orders before the crown unexpectedly passed to him. Yet even as the union promised to secure the realm, whispers began to swirl amidst the candlelit corridors of the royal court. Eleanor's vivacity and charisma drew admiration and attention, inspiring the poetry of troubadours and the envy of her peers. During the grueling journey of the Second Crusade, with both Eleanor and Louis travelling to the Holy Land in the mid-1100s, rumours found fertile ground. Soldiers and courtiers spoke in hushed tones of Eleanor's close association with her uncle Raymond of Poitiers, Prince of Antioch, whose charm and prowess in battle were legendary. The Queen's frequent and private meetings with Raymond caused concern, especially to Louis, and tales of infidelity soon blossomed from the uncertainties of war and the jealousies of the court. While no indisputable evidence emerged, the scandal forever altered perceptions of Eleanor at the French court. The trust between her and Louis eroded. The marriage, already strained by contrasts in personality and the absence of a male heir, now suffered under the weight of rumour and suspicion. Ultimately, these tensions culminated in the annulment of their marriage in 1152, with the official grounds being consanguinity, or the proclamation of being too closely related by blood. Yet it is widely understood that the scandal and the broader incompatibility between king and queen played decisive roles. The aftermath reshaped the political landscape of Western Europe. Shortly after her separation from Louis, Eleanor wed Henry of Anjou, who would soon become Henry II of England. In so doing, she carried her vast inheritance from Aquitaine to the English crown, setting the stage for generations of rivalry and conflict between France and England. Through this personal scandal, Eleanor's path carved new alliances and animosities, demonstrating how private rumour and public consequence were often entwined in the lives of medieval royalty. Her story stands as a testament to the powerful intersection of personality, perception, and politics in the shaping of the medieval world. In the soft glow of a medieval hearth, a small object might pass from one hand to another, a love token, modest yet laden with meaning, its surface touched by the hope and devotion of its giver. Among the varied artifacts of the Middle Ages, these tokens stand apart for their deep ties to human emotion. They were exchanged not for trade or barter, but as silent promises, as tangible embodiments of affection and fidelity. Their forms varied across towns and centuries. A delicate ring forged from copper or tin, a ribbon of embroidered silk, a simple pewter brooch inscribed with a phrase of yearning. Each was shaped not only by the hands of an artisan, but also by the heart of its creator. For these objects were rarely mere purchases. Instead, they were chosen or crafted with careful thought, infused with the secret language of romance. To hold a medieval love token was to feel the wonder of intimacy in an age when words were often guarded and gestures spoke volumes. The cool touch of metal against the skin, or the gentle fray of a woven strand between the fingers, became a daily reminder of someone cherished, perhaps far away. Soldiers marching toward distant battlefields sometimes wore tokens of their beloveds, hidden near their hearts, tucked underneath layers of wool and leather for comfort in lonely hours. Lovers, separated by feuds or duty, might exchange these small keepsakes as pledges to remain true until the fates would allow their reunion. The making of a love token was sometimes a private ritual, done by the giver's own hand. A girl might spend long evenings spinning colored threads into a bracelet, humming a secret tune as she worked. A young apprentice, shy and determined, might strike a coin with a borrowed tool, impressing it with a lover's initials or a barely decipherable emblem. Artisans knew that these were not grand treasures meant to dazzle courts, but humble symbols meant to whisper tender assurances, treasured even more for their imperfection and sincerity. In the rhythms of medieval life, embroiled with hardship and expectation, love tokens carved out small spaces for dreams and longing. Though fleeting as the seasons, their role was lasting. Exchanged at fairs under summer sunlight, or pressed into palms in shadowy corners behind church walls, these simple objects bore witness to the quiet persistence of love amid the tumult of the age. Through them, hope was carried forward, across distances, through battles, beneath the weight of tradition, reminding each night and morning that even in the harshest times, the heart found gentle ways to speak. Within the marble-clad corridors of the Byzantine court, few events have cast such a shadow as the rumoured infidelities of Empress Theodora, wife of Emperor Theophilos. Whispers swirled through the opulent chambers of Constantinople, suggesting that Theodora, at the height of her influence in the mid-9th century, had become entangled with members of the imperial court. In a society entranced by intrigue and ever watchful for weakness, even the suggestion of such betrayal held grave consequences. Whether grounded in truth or fed by the jealousies of rivals, these rumours threatened not only the empress's reputation, but also the very stability of the imperial household. The tensions that led to this scandal were woven into the fabric of palace life. Theodora had ascended to prominence through her marriage to Theophilos and, over time, had gained immense respect as both a patron of the arts and as a political figure in her own right. Yet this very prominence made her a target. The Byzantine court was notorious for its elaborate schemes and the ambitions of courtiers who viewed any rise in influence with suspicion. Amid this fragile balance, accusations of unfaithfulness became weapons in the cutthroat pursuit of power. Political enemies seized the opportunity, igniting fears of wider disloyalty and undermining confidence in the imperial line. The fallout from the scandal rippled far beyond tongue-wagging in palace corridors, Trust within the imperial family fractured, and those associated with the accused, including supporters, advisors, and family members, fell under intense scrutiny or suffered abrupt demotions. Theodora herself, whose poise and wisdom had been a stabilizing presence, found her authority diminished in subtle yet damaging ways. In the shifting atmosphere that followed, the traditional role of the Empress came under question, prompting a more cautious approach to women's influence in public affairs. Despite the passage of centuries, this episode stands as a potent reminder of how reputation, rumor, and rivalry could reshape both personal lives and the course of empires within the glittering, perilous world of Byzantium. In the gentle radiance of a candlelit chamber, the Byzantine ivory mirror offered its user more than just a reflection. Delicately carved from the gleaming tusk of an elephant, its surface was smooth to the touch, cool against the skin, and surprisingly substantial when held in a gloved or bare hand. The mirror, ringed with intricate patterns of vines, saints, or mythic beasts, evoked both artistry and devotion, echoing the grandeur of Byzantium itself. To run one's finger along the scalloped edge was to trace not only the work of a master craftsman, but the memory of far-off lands from which the precious ivory had been carefully sourced. The making of such a mirror was a patient labor, entrusted to some of the most skilled artisans of the imperial capital. Each piece of ivory was first softened with care, shaped and polished until it gleamed with a gentle luster. The carver then etched quiet stories along the frame, their tools as precise as the calligrapher's pen, inscribing both beauty and meaning. Yet, as prized as the ivory itself was the polished, reflective core, often a thin disc of highly burnished metal or, in the finest examples, rock crystal. Gazing into the Byzantine mirror, a noblewoman or gentleman saw a softened likeness of themselves, filtered through centuries of tradition and devotion. In everyday life, the mirror was far more than a simple object of vanity. It featured prominently in the private rituals of both the powerful and the humble. A noble lady might consult it before donning her jeweled veil, its cool surface catching the flicker of lamplight and softening her countenance with a warm, golden glow. In other moments, the mirror's subtle reflection offered a rare, private solace, a glimpse of one's soul in a world where reflection was as much spiritual as physical. To carry an ivory mirror was to claim a piece of luxury and ceremony, an object often exchanged as a cherished gift or carefully inherited through generations. Over time, the Byzantine ivory mirror became a small, enduring emblem of status, refinement, and a connection to the divine. Whether resting at a dressing table, tucked into a satchel for travel, or proudly displayed among a lady's treasured effects, it was as much a symbol of grace as a practical article. In the hush of the candlelit chamber, with the faint scent of wax and incense in the air, the silent ivory mirror watched centuries pass, reflecting both the world's outer beauty and its innermost dreams. In the year 1379, the royal courts of Castile saw a moment of grave consequence with the trial and subsequent exile of Constance of Castile. Constance, daughter of King Pedro the Cruel, had long lived at the heart of political intrigue. Her marriage to John of Gaunt, the powerful Duke of Lancaster, had been designed to strengthen claims and alliances between the English and Castilian crowns during a period of deep dynastic conflict. Yet behind the grandeur of titles and courtly ceremony the climate was fraught with suspicion, shifting loyalties, and the jockeying ambitions of a kingdom racked by civil war and familial feuds. The events leading to Constance's trial were rooted in the bitter legacy of her father's reign and her own contested claim to the Castilian throne. As Castile's stability wavered, factions within the nobility looked for pretexts to sideline potential rivals. Whispers of Constance's alleged indiscretions began to circulate, accusations of infidelity that struck at the dignity of both house and alliance. In the medieval world, where a queen's virtue was irretrievably tied to dynastic legitimacy, such charges could scarcely be ignored. Her opponents, intent on undermining her influence and severing the ties between England and her native Castile, seized upon the scandal. The trial itself unfolded in the ceremonial rigor and subdued peril of royal justice. Though details of the proceedings are obscured by time, what remains clear is that Constance was formally accused, adjudged, and found guilty of adultery. A sentence that, in this context, marked more than personal disgrace. The verdict led not only to her social ruin, but also to her exile, effectively removing her from the Castilian sphere and ending any immediate hope of advancing her or her husband's claims to the throne. The repercussions stretched beyond her fate alone. Constance's removal destabilized the Lancastrian alliance with Castile, shifting the balance of power and leaving her enduring claim to Castile in further dispute, reverberating across the courts of late medieval Europe. Thus, the trial and exile of Constance of Castile reflects more than the downfall of a single noblewoman. It was a passage in the relentless contest of royal ambition, where questions of honor, inheritance, and loyalty mingled with the private tragedies of exile and disgrace, calling to mind how the personal and political were woven inseparably together in the great tapestry of medieval history. In the gentle glow of a flickering hearth, the arrival of a royal decree was an event that seemed to pull the very air into stillness. To see such a document, tied with silk ribbon and pressed with the unmistakable authority of the royal seal, was to witness the living voice of the monarch made visible upon parchment. The making of a royal decree drew upon the talents of many hands, from the skilled scribe curled over sheets of fine vellum, his quill tip whispering through swirls of ink, to the chancellor who oversaw the wording and flow, ensuring each phrase carried the measured gravity of the king or queen. At last, a wax seal was impressed with a great metal matrix, warm and aromatic, binding the script to the authority of the sovereign. To hold a royal decree was to cradle a potent fragment of power. The parchment itself was creamy and smooth, yet weighty with its contents. The script danced in crisp strokes, Latin or French, or the evolving tongue of the land. Each letter meticulously drawn so as to leave no room for confusion or deceit. The wax seal, often as large as a man's thumb, pressed with the insignia of the realm, lent a subtle scent of resin and honey as it caught the light and gleamed red or green, the hues varying with each reign and purpose. A decree could address matters as grand as the founding of a new town, or as personal as the granting of a title. But for those who lived beneath its shadow, its presence was immediate and profound. An order to muster arms, a grant of safe passage, a declaration of market rights. Such a document might travel among villagers and lords alike, passed from hand to careful hand, every eye lingering on the clear signs of royal intent. Yet scarce few people owned the skill to read these words for themselves, so the reading aloud of a decree in the village square became an occasion of public theatre and communal suspense. Through the thrum of life in medieval towns and castles, the royal decree served as a vital thread, entwining the will of kings and queens with the daily realities of their subjects. It was a reminder that amid the unpredictability of harvests and seasons, law and order were shaped by distant hands but felt in every parish. To glimpse such a decree was to touch, fleetingly, the articulated heart of the realm, a tangible symbol of promise and command, the monarch's wishes rendered into the fabric of everyday existence. In the waning years of the 14th century, the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined the Low Countries was rent asunder by a scandal and subsequent conflict that would ripple through generations. The root of this deadly quarrel lay in the union of Margaret of Burgundy, daughter of Philip the Bold, and William of Jülich, a nobleman whose ambitions were matched only by his restlessness. Their affair, at first a matter of hushed whispers within candlelit halls, soon ignited the smouldering tensions between the principal houses, whose fortunes governed the fortunes of Flanders and its neighbouring domains. At the heart of this affair was the question of inheritance and allegiance. Margaret, as a scion of the powerful Burgundian dynasty, brought both prestige and political expectation to any alliance. William, a formidable figure in his own right, gained not only the favour of Margaret, but also aspirations to greater influence over lands that had long been under the steely gaze of Burgundian authority. Factional politics in Flanders were already volatile, with merchant cities resenting noble overlords and neighbouring princes vying for regional dominance. The revelation of the affair provided not only a personal scandal, but an opportunity for rival factions to assert themselves, each claiming loyalty either to Margaret's lineage or to William's ambitions. Violence erupted almost inevitably, as supporters of both houses marshalled forces and towns committed themselves to opposing banners. The conflict was not simply a matter of armies in the field, but also of sieges laid to strategic towns, contested river crossings, and the sapping of trade, which flowed so crucially through the arteries of Flemish cities. Noblemen were drawn in by ties of marriage and obligation, while guilds and townsfolk found their loyalties divided by promises of privilege or threats of retribution. The fighting left scars not only on the countryside, but upon the political landscape itself. As the dust settled, the consequences were profound and far-reaching. The peace, when it came, was uneasy and forced new compacts among the ruling elite. The Burgundian influence over the Low Countries grew ever tighter, bolstered by lessons hard learned amidst betrayal and bloodshed. For ordinary people, the affair and its aftermath meant a sharper sense of the fragile balance underpinning their world, and a new awareness of how personal decisions among the mighty could set entire regions aflame. In hindsight, historians recognize this moment as one more link in the chain of events that would draw the Burgundian state toward even greater power, and later toward the turbulence that would define the closing centuries of the medieval era. Amidst the churning tides of 14th and 15th century Holland, the battle flag of the Hook and Cod Wars emerged as a vivid symbol of division and hope. Imagine the standard fluttering urgently above the chaos of embattled towns, or unfurling atop the mast of a river barge, the rich hues of dye stark and brazen against the damp northern sky. Bold contrasts were favoured in its design. The cods, loyal to the Count of Holland, marked their allegiance with steadfast fish motifs, while the Hooks, defenders of the great noble families, often chose the hunting hook as their emblem. Each flag, painstakingly crafted by skilled hands, demanded time and costly materials. Lengths of linen were steeped in bark, plants, or minerals, giving birth to ochres and reds that would stand out across muddy fields and mist-laden waters. To carry such a banner bore weight, both physical and spiritual. Imagine the feel of thick woven cloth, heavy with moisture when rain swept in from the North Sea. The wooden pole, smooth from use, pressed against a shoulder, or planted resolutely in the ground, invited a sense of participation in the unfolding story of one's homeland. Often, the standard bearer was chosen for loyalty and strength, for this role was perilous. In the press of battle, all eyes turned to the flag. It was both a rallying point and a beacon for friend and foe alike. The loss of a flag could shatter morale, while its capture signaled the shift of fortune as surely as the changing wind. Beyond the savage flair of battle, these flags found a place amid the rhythms of ordinary medieval life. During moments of truce or festivity, they would be paraded through cobbled streets or hung from the rafters of great halls, reminders of past strife and hard-won peace. In workshops, women and men alike stitched and mended the torn cloth, embedding stories into every seam. Children, eyes wide, learned the symbols and their meanings from elders, understanding that the battle flag was more than a mark of war. It was an emblem of who they were, and of the unseen ties that bound neighbor to neighbor, even across the deep currents of loyalty and enmity. As seasons rolled onward, the flag weathered and faded, yet its presence lingered in the memory of towns and villages across Holland. In song, in poetry, and in the quiet murmurs of family gatherings, the story of the battle flag was passed down. More than a piece of fabric, it had become a living witness to the hopes and struggles of a people navigating the tumult of their medieval world, forever fluttering between discord and unity. In the intricate world of medieval dynasties, threads of legitimacy and inheritance often formed the backbone of political stability. In the mid-14th century, the royal courts of Navarre and France were beset by a particularly fraught episode when Blanche of Navarre, widow of King Philip VI of France and regent of Navarre, found herself at the center of swirling rumors concerning the legitimacy of her children. The accusations did not arise in a vacuum. They were seeded in the simmering tensions of succession disputes and the ever-present desire for influence over the thrones of both Navarre and neighboring realms. As the widow of King Philip VI, Blanche held significant power, but also stood vulnerable to rivals eager to undermine her authority. The birth of her children, whose paternity was suddenly and forcefully thrown into question, became a source of public fascination and private maneuvering. Nobles and factions loyal to competing branches of the royal house seized upon any sign of scandal as an opportunity to advance their own claims. The whispers regarding the parentage of Blanche's children threatened not only their positions as heirs, but the wider alliances that depended on recognized lines of succession. The effects of these disputed claims rippled throughout the delicate architecture of medieval European politics. The challenge to Blanche's children cast doubt over future agreements, disrupted existing alliances, and fueled a series of legal and diplomatic skirmishes that would shape the fate of both Navarre and France. Efforts to resolve these disputes often involved intricate investigations, mediated by church authorities and influential courtiers, but nonetheless left seeds of suspicion and resentment. Over time, the questions of legitimacy weakened the perceived stability of the monarchies involved, encouraging rival claimants to press their cases with renewed intensity. This period of upheaval illustrates how the medieval world, despite its formal hierarchies and codified laws, remained deeply vulnerable to the vagaries of rumor, reputation, and personal enmity. Blanche of Navarre's ordeal serves as a telling reminder that dynastic claims were never merely matters of blood, but were subject to the shifting tides of politics, ambition, and human intrigue. The legacy of this conflict lingered on, shaping the course of succession and the fragile peace among kingdoms for years to come. The royal lineage charter was more than just a parchment or a relic of officialdom. It was a living testament to the bloodlines and claims of a medieval house, a repository of ink and dreams woven together into authority itself. Courtiers and noble families guarded such documents with an intensity equal to that given to jeweled crowns or silken banners. Sealed within vaults or carried within intricately carved cases, the charter spoke in eloquent Latin script, its words penned by the most skilled scribes of the realm. Each letter was drawn by hand upon vellum, a delicate, creamy surface made from calfskin, its subtle scent mingling with the waxy aroma of the seals pressed carefully beneath the family crest. To hold a royal lineage charter was to grasp both the weight of legacy and the fragility of human ambition. The parchment would ripple softly at the edges, thick yet supple between a ruler's fingers, bearing the heavy, metallic tang of the leaden seal. When unfurled, it revealed row upon row of ancestors' names, dates, and honorifics, intertwined with the heraldic flourishes of their dynastic shields. The inks, rich with plant and mineral pigments, seemed to shine in the candlelight, each stroke a silent claim to ancient pacts and noble heritage. For those tasked with presenting or defending the charter before a council or a king, its presence could stir both pride and trepidation, for the fortunes of entire families might rest upon the legitimacy it affirmed. In the rhythm of medieval life, the charter played a part both rare and momentous. While ordinary folk might never glimpse its contents, they lived in a world shaped by the document's dictates. Marriages were brokered, lands bequeathed, and titles bestowed, all orchestrated beneath the authority that the royal lineage charter invoked. At festivals, when lords paraded their ancestry and livery, the charter's assurances whispered beneath every embroidered cloak and spoken toast. In troubled times when doubt or rebellion shadowed a throne, the unveiling of the charter could quell rivals or rouse loyal hearts. For its proof was taken as an echo of divine providence, guiding the hand of succession. The making and keeping of such an object intertwined artistry and reverence. Beyond its legal function, the charter was a bridge between generations, a tangible thread stretching back through centuries of struggle and triumph. For those who brushed their fingertips over its creased vellum or gazed upon its looping script, the charter was a silent companion, a constant reminder that the course of medieval lives and destinies so often depended not only on sword and shield, but also on the careful preservation of words, lineage, and the memory of noble promise. In the tapestry of medieval court intrigue, the story of Philippa of Hainault's maid offers a compelling glimpse into the precariousness of life within royal circles. Philippa, the devoted queen consort of King Edward III of England, maintained a household replete with attendants, each carefully chosen for their loyalty and discretion. Yet even within this carefully curated company, temptation and betrayal found their shadows. One of Philippa's favoured maids became entangled in a clandestine romance, a secret liaison that inevitably drew the wary eyes of those who watched for impropriety at the heart of the court. The discovery of the maid's lover unsettled the household, for such a lapse in propriety did not merely reflect upon the individual servant, but threatened to implicate the queen herself. In the unforgiving atmosphere of the English medieval court, the actions of a royal attendant could become a mirror held up to the honour of their mistress. Rumours began to swirl, suggesting that if a servant so close to Philippa could betray the sanctity of the royal household, then the Queen's own judgment and virtue might be called into question. The stakes were perilously high, for the reputation of queens was expected to remain unsullied, beyond even the whispers of scandal. With her household's integrity at risk, and the King's council eager to demonstrate harsh justice, the matter could not remain private. The maid, once a trusted confidant within the royal chambers, was placed on trial. Her secret lover was revealed, and the consequences were swift and unforgiving. She was executed, a grim display intended to assert moral order and reinforce the Queen's distance from any hint of complicity. Yet the ripples of the affair lingered. Philippa, though not formally accused of wrongdoing, endured the uneasy scrutiny of courtiers and chroniclers alike. The incident underscored both the vulnerability and the isolation of queenship, highlighting how, even without direct culpability, proximity to scandal could cast a long and chilling shadow. In the aftermath, the composition and oversight of the Queen's household became stricter, reflecting a sharpened awareness of the political dangers lurking within walls meant to be sanctuaries. For Philippa, the episode marked not only a moment of personal distress, but an enduring lesson in the delicate art of survival at the heart of medieval power. The royal court never again regarded its boundaries as quite so secure, its structure as wholly unassailable, knowing that sometimes the gravest dangers came from those closest at hand. The poisoned cup, at once an object of gilded beauty and mortal danger, features prominently in the shadowed corners of medieval history. Crafted with all the delicate artistry of the age, these cups were often coated in precious metals, adorned with intricate engravings and sometimes inlaid with fragile jewels. Yet beneath their polished surface, an air of suspicion lingered, for it was not always the cup itself, but rather the powder, tincture, or elixir that might dance along its rim, waiting for an unsuspecting hand to raise its fatal toast. In the quiet gloom of a stone-lit great hall, the act of lifting such a goblet could evoke both reassurance and dread. The metallic chill of gold or silver against one's palm was a sign of prestige, its ornate form a symbol of status for the noble or the wealthy merchant. But at royal feasts and private councils, every raised cup might also be weighed with the silent question of trust. Scent and taste could not always warn the senses of treachery. It became common for those of high rank to appoint trusted servants to taste their drink first, ever wary of the jealousy and ambition that simmered beneath courtly rituals. The making of these cups was the work of masterful smiths, They hammered and shaped metal in the soft light of their forges, careful not only in design, but also in considering the interiors of the vessel. Some craftsmen embedded secret symbols or used subtle alloys reputed to change color when touched by certain poisons. Many believed that unicorn horn, real or merely claimed to be, offered a safeguard against toxins, and so cups fashioned from narwhal tusk or ivory were prized as much for their supposed protection as their rare material. In medieval culture, the poisoned cup loomed far beyond the dining table. Its legend inspired stories of intrigue and betrayal, threading through ballads, chronicles, and cautionary tales shared in the flickering glow of firelight. The cup became a symbol of both the fragility and the complexity of power, a reminder that trust must be as carefully tended as the goldsmith's handiwork. Even as generations passed, the memory of the poisoned cup lingered, whispering of the hidden dangers that lay nestled within the rituals of everyday life. In the early 14th century, England found itself in the throes of political turmoil, with power and loyalty shifting in dangerous tides. At the heart of this upheaval stood Isabella of France, an intelligent and formidable queen consort and the wife of Edward II, born into the French royal family. Isabella had been married to Edward as a gesture of diplomacy, yet their union grew increasingly strained as the king continued to place his favourites, such as Piers Gaveston, and later Hugh Despencer the Younger, above all others at court. Discontent simmered throughout the realm, as nobles felt their own influence diminish, and the king's mismanagement led to deepening social unrest. Isabella's breaking point came in the late 1320s, after years spent watching her husband's court drift into chaos and alienation. Sent to France on a diplomatic mission in 1325, she soon refused to return home, citing the dangers posed by the Despensers. In France, she encountered Roger Mortimer, an exiled English nobleman who had escaped the Tower of London and shared her opposition to Edward and his circle. Whispers of their close alliance and rumours of an intimate affair quickly traversed both the English and French courts, though the true nature of their relationship would always remain shrouded in speculation. Together, Isabella and Mortimer plotted the overthrow of Edward II. In the autumn of 1326, with a modest invasion force and the support of disaffected English nobles, they landed on the Suffolk coast. Their cause gathered momentum with remarkable speed, as many rallied to their banner against the unpopular king. Edward, abandoned by his supporters and powerless to resist, was soon captured and forced to abdicate in favour of his son, Edward III. The old king was imprisoned and would later die under mysterious and grim circumstances. The deposition of Edward II marked a turning point in English history. Isabella and Mortimer assumed control as regents for the young Edward III, reshaping the landscape of English governance. However, their rule would be brief, as resentment brewed among the nobility and the people alike. Eventually, Edward III would assert his authority, leading to Mortimer's execution and Isabella's withdrawal from public life. Yet, for a brief and dramatic span, Isabella of France, motivated by personal grievance, political calculation, and perhaps love, became a central architect of England's destiny, forever remembered as the she-wolf of France who toppled a king. Within the hushed walls of medieval monasteries and scriptoria, a quiet magic often took shape in the form of the illuminated manuscript. These remarkable volumes were far more than mere books. They were painstakingly crafted with devotion, their pages alive with gleaming gold leaf and lavish pigments. For the monks and scribes who created them, the process was one of reverence and patience. Each sheet of vellum, made from the treated skins of calves, sheep, or goats, was carefully prepared and smoothed. Then, with quill in hand and steady focus, the scribe would begin to trace the elegant calligraphy, line after line, word after deliberate word. The illumination itself, a term borrowed from the Latin for light, brought literal brightness to the page. Artisans, often working by flickering candlelight or beams of midday sun, applied delicate touches of gold leaf and vivid mineral colors. Deep blues from lapis lazuli, rich greens, and vibrant reds. They painted intricate borders, bedecked with leaves, fantastical creatures, and twisting vines. Sometimes scenes from biblical stories or the lives of saints spilled across the margins, inviting the gazer into a glittering world beyond the words. As the manuscript neared completion, it was carefully bound, sometimes between wooden boards, wrapped in leather, and occasionally adorned with metal clasps or jewels. To hold an illuminated manuscript in one's hands was an experience almost sacred. The pages felt cool and thick, pliant yet resilient, carrying centuries' worth of hope and human effort. Each turn revealed a new marvel, a dance of light as the gilded letters caught the sun. The tiny text and miniature paintings rewarded close study, allowing the reader, often a monk, a noble, or a well-to-do merchant, to lose themselves in contemplation or prayer. In a time when few could read, these manuscripts had a gravity and prestige all their own. They bore the wisdom of the ancients, sacred scripture, or treasured stories, elevating their keeper in learned company. Illuminated manuscripts played a vital part in the rhythms of medieval life, from the silent hours in monastic libraries to the ceremonial grandeur of a courtly hall. For communities who gathered to hear the spoken word, or who found solace in private devotion, these books provided tangible links to faith, art, and memory. Through their creation and their use, illuminated manuscripts became not only keepers of knowledge, but enduring testaments to ingenuity and wonder. A testament patiently preserved in parchment, pigment, and gold, echoing across the centuries to our own time. As the 11th century drew on, the heart of Italy pulsed with political intrigue and personal turmoil, none more striking than the dramatic marital rift of Matilda of Tuscany. Known as the Great Countess, Matilda stood as one of the most powerful figures of her era. Her alliances and immense estates pivotal in the ongoing clash between papal and imperial forces. Her marriage to Welf V, a young German nobleman from the influential House of Welf, was brokered in an age when noble unions were less about romance and far more about the ordering of loyalties and lands. For the papacy, the union promised to knit together two great houses, strengthening the church's hand amid the tempest of the investiture controversy, when the power to appoint bishops and abbots was at the heart of a bitter struggle between emperor and pope. Yet this carefully constructed alliance shattered unexpectedly just a few years after vows were exchanged. Charges of infidelity were leveled against Matilda. Claims that she had betrayed her husband in the sanctity of marriage. While documents from the time are laced with the biases and political aims of their creators, the accusation served a dual purpose. It provided Welf's family with a means to sever ties to Matilda without offending the church outright, while also striking at her reputation and diminishing her influence. Some chroniclers suggest deeper grievances simmered beneath the surface. Disappointment over power sharing, frustration with Matilda's autonomy, or perhaps resentment that she remained childless, threatening the legacy of both families. The ramifications of this high-profile divorce reverberated far beyond personal heartache. With the dissolution of their marriage, the carefully wrought alliance between Tuscany and the Welfs unravelled. Matilda, steadfast in her loyalty to the papacy, tightened her support for Pope Gregory VII, even as the Welf family began realigning themselves with Emperor Henry IV. The stage was set for a sharper polarization of loyalties across northern Italy and the wider Holy Roman Empire. Matilda's personal trials thus became inseparable from the currents of European history, as the lines between private life and public power blurred ever further. Cast against the backdrop of excommunications, sieges, and momentous councils, this episode stands as a vivid reminder of how, in the medieval world, the fate of nations could turn on the most intimate disputes. In the quiet chambers of a lordly manor, or perhaps the bustling nave of a parish church, a centuries-old ritual once marked the joining of two lives sought, the sealing of a medieval marriage contract. This object, at once humble and profound, emerged at the crossroads of personal commitment and worldly necessity. Written by the diligent hand of a clerk, often upon sturdy parchment, the marriage contract delineated the terms of union not only between bride and groom, but also between their families, their lands, and their fortunes. Its careful script bore promises and arrangements that would determine lives for generations. To hold such a contract in one's hands was to feel the tangible weight of hopes and obligations intertwined. The parchment, softened by the rough touch of many fingers, might still retain the faint scent of beeswax and ink, its surface marked by the elaborate flourishes of a legal scribe. Witnesses pressed their seals into mottled crimson wax, the imprints of family heraldry rising proudly from each dollop. Each word chosen for precision and protection. The contract recorded dowries, land rights, and genealogies, sometimes with appended notes of negotiation or compromise. A quiet testament to the careful choreography behind the celebrations of marriage. For those subject to its terms, the contract granted a rare sense of security in a world prone to upheaval. Women and men alike drew comfort from knowing that inheritance and property rights, as well as the sanctity of their union, were enshrined in the impassive language of law. Parents, ever mindful of legacy and alliance, saw within those lines a safeguard for their children and estates. The document helped stabilize the fragile networks of medieval society, forging bonds not only of affection, but also of fealty, obligation, and trust. Yet beyond its practical function, the marriage contract occupied a cherished place in the rhythms of daily life. Often read aloud before witnesses, its words became part of the living memory of a community. The contract was more than a simple legal safeguard. It carved the path for love, duty, and kinship to coexist within the intricate dance of medieval existence. It stood as a quiet sentinel in the coffers or chests of ancestral homes. Its presence a reminder that, even in an age distant and different from our own, people sought to shape their future with both hope and care, binding themselves together with parchment, ink, and steadfast intention. In the shifting tapestry of medieval Castile, the life and fate of Juana Manuel stand as a somber reminder of the precariousness of power and trust. Juana Manuel, a noblewoman of formidable lineage and influence, became enveloped in the intricate rivalries of her time. She was the daughter of Don Juan Manuel, the famed Prince of Villena, and through her eventual marriage to Henry of Trastamara, she came to occupy a vital position within the royal framework of Castile. As tensions rose between the crown and competing noble factions, suspicions and anxieties ran high, and the court became a place of whispered intrigue and lingering doubts. It was in this environment, fraught with uncertainty, that allegations of betrayal and espionage surfaced against Juana Manuel. The details of these accusations remain clouded by the political machinations of the moment. Some chroniclers point to rival nobles who may have wished to weaken her standing or to damage her family's influence at court. Others suggest courtly envy or the maneuverings of foreign interests seeking to destabilize the Castilian realm. Whatever the true origin, the charges were grave enough to spur her sudden imprisonment, effectively removing her from the network of power where she had long been a central figure. Juana Manuel's confinement was both swift and secretive. The circumstances of her captivity were never made fully transparent to the wider world, and she was held at a time when due process could give way easily to expedient justice. What followed only deepened the sense of uncertainty, for after a period held apart from her family and allies, Juana Manuel died in custody. The true cause of her death remains a mystery. Some contemporary writers attributed it to illness deepened by the privations of prison, while darker rumors hinted at foul play intended to ensure she could neither defend herself nor rally supporters. The impact of Juana Manuel's imprisonment and death reverberated through the court and far beyond walls. Her fall signaled a warning to other nobles of the perils inherent in political prominence, even for those of royal blood. It also altered the balance of power within Castile, as her lands and titles passed on, sometimes disputed, and sometimes quietly absorbed by those eager to strengthen their own position. In the wider context, her fate became emblematic of the dangers that arose when trust melted away beneath the surface of medieval politics, where loyalty could so quickly be questioned and lives changed, or ended, by accusations that were as much tools of influence as they were tests of character. Thus, the shadow of Juana Manuel's end lingered, shaping memories and decisions in Castile for years to come. In the quiet shadows of the medieval world, where flickering torchlight danced on the cold stone walls of castles and dungeons, the presence of iron shackles was an unspoken but unmistakable reality. These objects, crafted with care and calculation by local blacksmiths, were forged from bars of heavy iron, their surfaces often rough and pitted, where beams and hammers had shaped their final form. Each shackle was made in two curved halves, joined by a pin or rivet, and designed to close tightly about the wrists or ankles of those deemed guilty, unruly, or simply unfortunate enough to invoke the suspicion of authority. Holding a pair of iron shackles, one would feel the undeniable weight of their purpose, the chill of the metal bit into one's palms, and the hinges moved with a grinding reluctance that told of years spent in damp air, rust slowly claiming the iron. To wear such shackles, even for a moment, was to feel the immediate loss of liberty, the iron pressed against skin, unforgiving and unyielding, a constant reminder of the power wielded by those who held the keys. Few objects from that era conveyed the stark boundary between freedom and captivity quite so plainly. For those tasked with upholding law and order, shackles were more than simple restraints. They served as visible symbols of justice and discipline. In the bustle of a town square on market day, the sight of a prisoner led through the crowd in chains spoke a language that required no words. Justice, in all its severe forms, was administered openly and without apology, and the iron shackles transformed men and women into cautionary tales for all who passed by. These simple devices underscored society's fragile balance, their clinking echo uniting fear and order in every corner where they appeared. Yet the presence of shackles was not confined to dungeons or courts. Their silent testament extended into the fabric of daily life, shaping the relationship between authority and the common folk. The knowledge that such devices existed in every town, tucked away in armories or behind locked doors, lent gravity to the unwritten rules of conduct. In the quiet hours, as fires faded to embers and families gathered close, the distant memory of shackles served not only as a warning of society's harshness, but also as a reminder of the fine line that separated the protected from the accused in the medieval age. In the quiet heart of 11th century England, Lady Godiva emerged as an unexpected figure of legend. Known historically as the wife of Leofric, the powerful Earl of Mercia, she navigated a world shaped by landholding aristocracy, monastic endowment, and the struggles of a growing town. Over time, her legacy became entwined with a remarkable tale that would ripple through the centuries. According to medieval accounts that flourished many years after her lifetime, Lady Godiva rode unclothed through the streets of Coventry, a sacrifice intended to persuade her husband to lessen the oppressive taxes burdening his people. Though the historical Lady Godiva is well attested for her generosity and for her benefactions to various churches and abbeys, this legendary episode only entered written tradition several generations later, with chroniclers such as Roger of Wendover relating the story in the 13th century. The genesis of this tale likely reflects not a single event, but the confluence of local folklore, later invention, and genuine recollections of Lady Godiva's influence within her community. Coventry, rising as a prosperous market town under Godiva's patronage, bore the imprint of her charitable works, which must have left a deep impression on those who remembered her. The legend, drawing on themes of self-sacrifice, virtue, and the negotiation of power, transformed Lady Godiva into a symbol whose personal life became the subject of rumors and fascination. Notably, central to the lore is the idea of an indiscretion witnessed by a secret observer, often called Peeping Tom, who reputedly defied Godiva's command that the townsfolk remain indoors, and so was punished for his transgression. Though this particular embellishment would not appear in written form until the early modern period, suspicions and stories around such improprieties gradually became part of the fabric of the legend. The societal repercussions of this evolving narrative were profound. As the story of Lady Godiva's ride gained popularity across England, it offered a rare example of a noblewoman depicted as both powerful and public-facing, albeit at a cost to her personal modesty in the popular imagination. Her rumoured indiscretions, filtered through layers of myth and moral caution, invited debates about virtue, civic responsibility, and the boundaries of female agency. Over centuries, the legend influenced local custom, shaped public festivals, and inspired countless works of art and literature. In this way, Lady Godiva's story, whether rooted in fact or imagination, reframed the memory of medieval womanhood and left an enduring imprint on how society remembered both her sacrifice and the vulnerabilities such tales could impose on the reputation of historical women. In the quiet halls of medieval castles and manor houses, tapestries offered more than a splash of colour upon otherwise cold stone walls. These magnificent textile creations, often painstakingly woven by skilled artisans, were among the most treasured possessions of the nobility. Stretching from one end of a chamber to another, a tapestry would soften echoes, shield inhabitants from biting draughts, and transform bare expanses into lively stories threaded in wool and silk. Each tapestry was a testament to patience and artistry, sometimes requiring years to complete, as the weavers worked thread by thread, guided by detailed designs known as cartoons. The making of a medieval tapestry began in workshops illuminated by sunlight spilling through high windows. Looms, tall and sturdy, stood ready to receive fine strands of wool, linen, and sometimes silk, each dyed with colours carefully derived from plants, minerals, and insects. The scent of lanolin and dye mingled in the air. As the weaver's fingers moved, vibrant scenes came to life. Hunts in dense forests, epic battles, or delicate glimpses of mythic love and medieval piety. Bold blues, shimmering golds, and deep crimsons captured the imagination and drew the eye, each thread intertwining with history. To handle a finished tapestry was to appreciate its surprising weight, a tangible reminder of its substance and purpose. The fabric, lush and heavy, would respond to the touch, softly yielding as it folded, but resolute when unfurled across stone walls or draped over grand beds. At times, smaller tapestries might be wrapped around shoulders on chilly evenings, their warmth and texture a comfort to privileged owners. In grander settings, tapestries served as both ornament and insulation, enveloping the space in softness and visual storytelling. Beyond their material qualities, these tapestries were living chronicles, conveying power, prestige, and identity. Within castle walls, they hinted at family lineage, celebrated great deeds, and echoed the aspirations of those who commissioned them. A visiting guest might pause before a tapestry, recognizing the retelling of a familiar tale or marveling at the artistry on display. Each fabric panel fostered conversation, reinforced alliances, and reminded all who entered the chamber of a world beyond stone and timber, a world in which fabric and story intertwined, adding richness and warmth to the rhythms of medieval life. Thank you for spending your evening journeying through the world of the Middle Ages, where the echoes of distant centuries invite quiet reflection. May the stories of long ago linger softly in your thoughts as you find rest tonight, carried gently into peaceful dreams.